In today's video, I'm going to be constructing a mini crime drama to show the significance of fingerprint analysis. The story begins when Taylor sat down with her computer around 2 p.m. to make one of her genetics exam mini videos. She decided to take a break, and when she returned, her computer was gone. She frantically decided to call the police, in which they came to assess the crime scene. After examining the scene, they found a strand of hair sitting at the desk where the computer was last seen. The police decided to take this DNA and analyze it in their crime lab after talking to a key witness, a neighbor who saw a figure walking out of the house with a computer bag. Her alibi was cleared after questioning. Police were able to narrow down 4 possible suspects and take DNA samples from them, who were all in the house at the time of the crime. They are the victim's father, Tom, the victim's half-sister, Peyton and Meredith, and the victim's half-brother, Thomas, who were all Tom's biological children. Back in the crime lab, PCR was used to amplify all of the DNA for 2 different VNTR loci. VNTR, or variable number of tandem repeats, is one of the repeats that can be used to create a DNA fingerprint. Following DNA amplification, the samples are run on separate gels using gel electrophoresis to create DNA fingerprints. This process uses an electric charge to separate DNA according to size, where the negatively charged DNA moves to the positive side of the plate and the smaller DNA fragments travel quicker and further down the plate than the larger fragments, forming a series of bands which we will analyze. The results allow us to view the DNA fingerprint of the hair at both VNTR loci and compare the DNA samples of each of our suspects and the victim. Looking at both loci, one can see that Tom is a biological parent of Taylor, Peyton, Meredith, and Thomas, since they all have the top band in common, which is true between biological parents and offspring. In order to find a match, the culprit is the individual whose DNA bands are a match for the hair at both VNTR loci. Let's take a look at VNTR locus 1. First, we must rule out that the hair is not the victim, since the victim had been at the crime scene. The victim's DNA fingerprint is not an exact match to the hair sample. This means that Taylor is innocent. Our first suspect, Tom, is a perfect match for the bands that match the hair sample. This makes him a prime suspect. However, we cannot rule him as the culprit without looking at locus 2. Our second suspect, Peyton's DNA fingerprint, is not a match to the hair sample. This means that she is indeed innocent, since the culprit must be a match at both loci. The same can be said for Meredith. Looking at Meredith's DNA fingerprint, she is not a match to the hair sample. This means that she is also innocent. However, looking at Thomas's DNA fingerprint, he is indeed a match to the hair sample found at the crime scene. This means that, like Tom, he is a prime suspect. Looking at VNTR locus 2, we can only rule out Tom or Thomas's DNA fingerprint. While Peyton is a match to the hair sample in the second locus, she was not a match in the first locus, therefore she cannot be the culprit. We can see that Tom's DNA fingerprint is not a match to the hair sample, so he is innocent. Thomas's DNA fingerprint is a match for the hair sample found at the scene. Since he is a perfect match to the hair sample at both loci, he is our culprit.